I recently acquired the Olympus ONB E-M10 Mark II. It's my first micro four thirds camera, or MFT camera. I've been on DSLRs for quite some time, it's about 2007, 2008 when I got my Canon XTI. And I've gone through a few Canon cameras, and I'm now on the Canon 5D Mark III. But in recent years, I've become less enamored with the size and weight of the camera with regards to general purpose casual photography. I just don't want to carry this around anymore. Even ungripped with the small lens on it, it's still heavy and bulky. So I find myself not carrying my camera, and I'm just relying on my iPhone, which, you know, while it does take great photos, I find myself in scenarios where the iPhone doesn't give me enough, and I wish I had more horsepower, like in a low light scenario, such that I could shoot raw and then take it into Lightroom or Photoshop and try to pull out more details and create a better image out of that in post-production. So barring that fact, not wanting to carry a bulky camera with the horsepower that I want, and the iPhone lacks that horsepower, I started looking at micro four thirds a couple years ago. But the reason why I never jumped in immediately to MFT is because of cost. Cost in terms of supporting the lens system. I'm already invested in EF lenses. I just didn't want to buy another camera, because if I buy another camera, I know I'm going to want to buy more lenses, and that's just a fact of life. You buy a camera, you want to get lenses to use with that camera. So given that fact, I kind of held off for a while, but in recent months I said, you know what, I kind of wish I had a micro four thirds camera. I just want a lighter form factor camera to take around. And so I was looking at the E-M10. I was close to buying it, and then they announced the E-M10 Mark II, which offered 5-axis image stabilization instead of the 3 from the original E-M10. So I said, you know what, it's about the right time to buy. So I ended up ordering the E-M10 Mark II plus the Olympus 12-40 f2.8 from B&H a couple months back. I received this both 6 weeks ago. So I've been sitting on this camera lens combo for about 6 weeks now, messing around with it. So for those that don't know, the micro four thirds is a 2x crop factor to be equivalent to 35mm DSLR. So 12-40 is equivalent to 24-80 millimeters on a full frame sensor. So this gives me an equivalent platform to, say, a Canon 24-70 f2.8L on a 5D Mark III. I'm not saying that this glass is technically just as good as a Canon f2.8 24-70. I'm just saying that it does give me a similar platform to work with that gives me photos in the same perspective. But that being said, this is a highly regarded lens. It's been out for a while. The glass is excellent, from my opinion, and from what everyone's written. The build quality is great. The image quality is excellent. So it's not, it's not something to scoff at. So that being said, let me just start talking about the camera body itself. There's tons of reviews online already about the E-M10 Mark II, so I'm not going to go into all the details. I'm just going to cover a few points that I found in my use of this camera from my perspective. So if you want more details, in-depth details, go to those other review sites, those pro review sites who've had this camera longer than I have, because they've had preview bodies from Olympus. Go read their articles, go check out their videos and get more details there, but I'm just going to cover my perspective on the camera. That being said, since I wanted a light camera, this is light. It's 342 grams, which is quite light, especially compared to this. Incidentally, the lens itself is 382 grams, so it's heavier than the body, and the combo together, they balance quite well. But given the lens is just as heavy as the body, if not more, it's still lighter than this 5D3, so I'm happy that way. Build quality is really good. It's got a metal frame, so it's got rubber and plastic, I think, on the exterior, but it doesn't have any weird cheap flex to it, like in entry-level cameras might have this flex to it. It doesn't creak or anything. I do appreciate that. It feels solid. The knobs, the mode dial and the shutter speed and aperture adjustment knobs have knurling. I'm not sure if they're metal, but they are solid and they do click, so you get that positive feedback, and there's no sponginess to them, so you feel like they're quality. I mean, you feel the quality in that, so I do appreciate that as well. The rear of the camera is pretty standard fare. You've got this LCD screen. It's a 90-degree swivel screen, not 180 degrees, so if you're spoiled with 180 degrees on your other cameras and you want to go to this one, you might be disappointed. But this gives me just the right amount of adjustments if I need to, say, take an inconspicuous street photography shot without anyone like paying attention to me. I can just take a shot, be casual about it, and I have that top down view, and I can compose a shot just like that and hit the shutter button. Good to go. As far as the controls on the back of the body are concerned, the controls are okay. They are kind of clumsy. So from my hand on the grip, it's not too bad, but if you have bigger hands, you might have issues hitting the buttons with the heel of your thumb or your palm right here. But you'll learn over time when you're handling this camera. After a while, you'll get an understanding of how you can grip the camera without hitting the buttons on accident. But what I do want to mention are that the buttons are kind of, when you're trying to step to the menu system in order to adjust your camera settings for the non-exposure stuff, like let's just say ISO, metering mode, white balance, those other non-direct to the aperture and the shutter speed. When you're stepping through the menu system, it's clunky to use the back controls, but if I found out you can use the top knobs to dial them once you're in the menu. So these are a lot faster and it feels a lot better. So I would skip this and just use the knobs when you're trying to manage or run through the menu system. It would make you feel a lot better, less frustrated dealing with this. That's pretty much it as far as technical details on the camera. There is a pop-up flash, which I don't use, but it's there if you need it. But what I do care about is actually off-camera flash. And since I already mentioned I use the Canon system already, and I already have existing off-camera flash, I have Pulse buff gear. So I have this Einstein on my right behind me over my shoulder. I have this Canon 580 EX2 speed light, but I also use them with Pocket Wizard. So I have a Power MC2 on that. I have a Flex TT5 Pocket Wizard hooked up to this speed light. Before you get all excited, you can't use the Pocket Wizard Control TL to get the advanced communications, so you can like adjust the flash power remotely from your camera with the Olympus. But what you can do is use just basic triggering. So if you have a Pocket Wizard Plus 3 like I have here, or I think they have another like the Pocket Wizard X Plus X or something, but you can have basic triggering on off-camera flash. So if I were to take a shot with this camera and the flash goes off just fine. It's a 1/250th of a second flash sync speed, so you're good to go on that. And since I already have my off-camera flash gear with my Pocket Wizards and they work with the Olympus, I'm quite happy with this. Now I just wanted to bring up one point about the focus stacking or focus bracketing feature that is now in this camera. E-M10 Mark II, they introduced this thing called focus bracketing in camera. For those who know what focus bracketing or focus stacking is, it's essentially used in macro photography mainly, where what you do is you take a shot, focus, take another exposure, focus, take another exposure, focus. So you're constantly focusing into the frame. The whole point of that is so you can take it in post-production, go to Photoshop, stack all the photos, blend them together, and create a photo that has it has focus in every depth of the frame. So like if you're shooting macro photography with an f2.8 lens and you have this object, you can get the entire object front to back in focus using focus bracketing. But the whole concept was manual, where you take a shot, focus again, take a shot, focus again, and you just keep stepping the focus deeper into the frame to get all the exposures you need. But what they did in camera is on this E-M10 Mark II is you can set the number of frames you want, say 20, set your interval, how much focus you want between each exposure. Once you're dialed in, hit the shutter button once, it'll automatically take a shot, focus, take a shot, focus until all these shots are taken. It saves a lot of time. It's a really handy feature for those macro photographers, but what I wanted to bring up is the fact if you want to use off-camera flash, it's not going to work, not with wireless at least. What I found that I could do is, hook up, if you have a hot shoe to flash sync, PC sync, you can hook it up to your flash that way. But I figured the safest bet for me would be just put my Pocket Wizard and then use a sync cord from the Pocket Wizard to my flash to get that to trigger off remotely or off camera. And that'll work. What also, another caveat with the off-camera flash and the focus stacking feature is you have to shoot a slow shutter speed. Not sure why you have to do this, but I looked online and people who try that with the Olympus cameras with off-camera flash and, with just regular flash and the focus bracketing is that you're going to get banding in the photo, like the black bars top or bottom with flash if you don't shoot a slow shutter speed. So your mileage may vary. I've heard 1/40th of a second. I had to go down to 1/15th of a second or 1/20th of a second to be safe. So that kind of sucks, but granted, there's not many people doing this, so that 1 or 2% of you who are going to use off-camera flash with the focus bracketing feature on the E-M10 Mark II, that's something you need to be aware of. You have to shoot a slow shutter speed, and then dial your settings accordingly for the exposure. Another point on the focus bracketing and off-camera flash. You also have to have fast recycle times. So you kind of, if you're going to do focus bracketing, since you can't adjust how fast or how much time is in between each shot during the focus bracketing, it's just going to automatically take the shots as fast as it can, the camera can. So if your flash is still cycling, there's more often than not, if it's not cycling fast enough, you're going to have a frame in your focus bracketing that doesn't have flash going off. So it'll take a shot, and then the flash didn't cycle fast enough, and it takes another shot, and the flash didn't go off, and you have this pretty much an underexposed frame or a black frame in your focus bracketing, which pretty much ruins your whole focus bracketing session right there, and you have to redo the whole thing. So that's another caveat. So basically, you'll just probably want to get something like this that plugs in to a wall outlet. So you're using your AC power. Just dial down the power of the flash so it doesn't have to recharge the capacitor for full power, and then adjust your settings accordingly. And if you're going to use a speed light with flash, that's going to be tough because battery powered. Not to mention the Wi-Fi. It's not going to work well with Wi-Fi. And even if you did wired PC sync, you have to still dial this down to low power so it cycles fast enough off battery. So enough of that. I mean, that's pretty much those 2 points, the focus stacking and the off-camera flash, 2 things I wanted to talk about. Couple quirks I wanted to bring up. There's the manual focus ring on these lenses. What I didn't realize is there's a clutch such that you can move it back and forth from manual to autofocus. So one time I was trying to use the camera and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't autofocusing even though I had AF enabled in the camera. And I started messing around with the lens, and then finally I just incidentally put pressure on the focus wheel and got it to move up and said, oh, okay. So when you expose the manual distance settings on the focus ring, you're actually you're setting it to manual focus only. So that's just a little quirk that you need to learn, or you'll learn it once and won't forget it again. So if you have your lens in a bag or whatever and you pull it out, and you can't use AF, maybe it moved while it was in the bag. So something to keep in mind. Another point are these chargers, the chargers for the batteries. I'm not really a fan of these Olympus chargers. The Canon chargers are great. They have this built-in prong, so you just pull it out and put it in your wall, and you're good to go. These things come with a cable, and I'm not really a fan of cables. As you know, if you already have enough cables, you got your phone cable, your laptop cable, there's just too much to carry. And I wish they had the prongs built in. But what some people found out is that these Apple adapters that come with most Apple devices now are the same standard as this. So you can just plug it in and you're set to go, and you don't have to carry on a cable. Granted, this isn't fit flush. This actually protrudes out more, the body of the charger, so the prongs are going to be slightly exposed, but it's not a big deal and it shouldn't be too unsafe. But if you actually care, what you can do is go on Amazon, get one of these adapters, and you can hook it up and it'll fully plug into the wall or your AC outlet. I'm writing an article about the E-M10 Mark II, and I mentioned this little item in there. So if you go to that review, which I'm going to post a link to in the video description, you can find a link to this on Amazon, so you can get one for yourself. They're pretty cheap, like a few bucks. With that being said, either way, if you don't care about it not being flush to the wall, if you're already an Apple user, got to go with one of these. Don't forget the cable. Stick the original charger cable in the box and stick with one of these, and you'll be good to go. That's pretty much it. But aside from all these little quirks and details, I do love this camera. It's lightweight. The form factor is awesome. Even though I didn't want to invest in another lens platform, obviously I bought more lenses. So I ended up getting the Olympus 60mm f2.8 macro, which I wanted to play more with the focus stacking. And since I didn't already have a macro lens for my Canon system, amazingly enough, I said, you know what, it made sense just to buy this macro lens. And since I wanted an even lighter and a faster lens, wider aperture lens to use like at night and for just general purpose street photography, I ended up getting the Olympus 17mm f1.8, which is even lighter than these other two lenses, obviously. So that gives me a great setup right now as far as my Micro Four Thirds system. So do I recommend this camera? So far, yes. E-M10 Mark II is pretty solid. I think you'll be happy with it. If you're coming from DSLRs like I am and you want a supplementary camera to just go along with your main DSLR, definitely consider the E-M10 Mark II. But if you're looking for a new camera stepping out from an iPhone or from a generic point and shoot, I would probably recommend looking at the EM5 Mark II, which gives you a little weather sealing, a little bit more features, which you might appreciate from your primary camera. So that being said, definitely check out my review on my blog. If you go to okobj.net, I'll have the link to that article with photos, sample photos taken with this camera on that article. So I'll have that link in the description and check that out. Thanks for watching.